Suspension is one of the most important aspects into a well-performing motorcycle, and that is exactly why I'm making this video for you guys today. Welcome back to another video, everybody. My name is Anthony, and today we're going to be talking about putting a JBI spec WP to KYB SSS Spring Conversion Kit onto my Gas MC350F. Now that is a mouthful, so I'm going to quickly lay it out for you guys before we head out to Fox Raceway and actually test and ride on these forks. So stick around to the end of the video because I'm going to be giving you guys my riding impressions, what the differences are between the air fork technology and this KYB spring fork, and if it is worth your hard-earned money to go ahead and upgrade to spring forks if you have a KTM Husky or Gas. Now back to the forks, this KYB spring fork conversion kit still utilizes the upper and lower fork tubes provided from WP. However, it no longer utilizes the fork lugs from WP. Instead, they are swapped out to the Technical Touch KYB fork lugs that are really cool looking. They're in a black anodized finish and they have awesome machining. Now, obviously, all of the WP AER or air fork technology is completely swapped out with the genuine KYB fork springs and, most importantly, those fork cartridges. And last but not least, the settings that are tied to this. Now, this has been revalved to the JBI spec. This is a motocross spec that is set up for my height, weight, and riding ability. Now that we have all of that out of the way, let's head out to the track, get some good riding clips for you guys, circle back to the house and give you guys my riding impressions, and most importantly, if it is worth your hard-earned money to go ahead and upgrade from that stock WP air fork technology to this spring fork. After another great day riding Fox Raceway, we are back at the house. I'm super stoked on how the entire day went. From the beginning to the end, the front forks felt awesome, and the overall performance and comfortability of the front forks were absolutely amazing. So I'm super stoked to give you guys my riding impressions. But before we dive into that, we're going to be covering over the stock componentry seen in the WP AER 48 air fork. Now on my left hand, I have my personal fork. This is the JBI spec WP AER 48 air fork. Now it has been revalved to the motocross spec to fit my riding ability, my height, and my weight, but it still retains that AER or air fork technology from WP. During the revalve process, JB goes in and breaks down the entire shim stack, replaces it with the motocross spec, along with some additional JBI hard parts. But again, it still has that air fork technology. Now, since the air fork was introduced by KTM back in 2017, each year has made some incremental strides, and I think the latest iteration of the air fork, which was recently introduced on the 2024.5 factory edition bikes and is now seen on the 2025 model year bikes, is probably the best air fork that is to be seen on a motocross bike yet. With that being said, there is still some performance potential left on the table running the air fork setup. And I think that's why a lot of guys don't want to buy a KTM bike, or maybe even have a KTM bike and don't like the overall performance of the bike because of these air forks. At times, the air forks can be quite harsh, unpredictable, and not as confidence inspiring as the spring forks seen on all the Japanese model bikes and the recently introduced Triumph model bikes. Yes, it is really cool to essentially adjust your spring rate on the fly by adding or decreasing air pressure in your fork, but that also comes at a cost to the overall performance and feel of the forks. At the end of the day, are the air forks really that bad? I don't think so. I've ridden with these air forks on my personal bike for nearly 3 years now, and more often than not, I'm really enjoying the overall suspension performance from my bike. I do understand how some people don't like to check their air pressure every ride and just don't like the feel of the front forks, because at times I do get that harsh feeling, I do get that unpredictableness, and quite honestly, it's just not as confidence inspiring when riding a Japanese model bike with the spring forks on it, or even riding a KTM with spring forks. And speaking of spring forks, that is a great segue into talking about how these forks performed on track today out at Fox Raceway. Now, early in the morning, the track was absolutely prime, traction levels were very high, and there was little to no bumps. So the forks felt really amazing right out of the gate, and I feel like honestly a lot of suspension setups that are stock or tuned by any reputable suspension tuner would perform really well. The real test came towards the end of the day when more acceleration and braking bumps started to arise from the track as the track broke in and started to actually break down over the course of the day. One of the first things that I noticed, and arguably my favorite thing that I noticed from putting these spring forks onto my bike, is how well the front wheel was glued to the ground. Entering a corner or a rut never felt so easy in my life in comparison to the WP AER48 air fork. Again, going back to the unpredictability that the air fork can provide, it's kind of a vague feeling entering a corner when you're on the side knobbies of your tires. Now that almost is completely eliminated with a set of spring forks, again, whether it is stock valving or revalved by any reputable suspension tuner. I've also ridden many other tracks with a different set of spring forks on my bike, and I could say that it works well in dry and slippery conditions, tacking conditions, and even wet conditions that you'd see early in the morning at your local motocross track. Moving on to how it handles the bumps, this being acceleration bumps that you would see exiting a corner, or even braking bumps that you would see entering a corner. If there is a succession of bumps, you can expect this KYB SSS Spring Conversion Kit to eat it up for breakfast. The small to medium bump compliance is through the roof in comparison to the air fork. Throughout the entire stroke of the travel, this fork is not only just more plush, but honestly just overall more comfortable, and those big hits, it still has plenty of progression and bottom out character or bottom out resistance to take care of those big impacts that you would see from landing from a jump or even a G out. Now, with that being said, I do think it is a noteworthy upgrade for any of you KTM Husky or Gas platform owners to go ahead and buy a spring conversion kit for your bike. You're overall going to get more suspension performance out of your front forks, and I think you'll be a happier rider and a safer rider when you're out there on the track. Now, I've heard a lot of people talk about if KTM would put spring forks on their bike, they would go out and buy a KTM, and I do think the day will come where KTM will eventually put spring forks back on their motocross models. We've seen it back in 2024 when their cross-country models got released, that they actually went out into a closed cartridge style of fork, and I do think that similar sort of technology will translate to their motocross bikes here very soon. They even released the new 300 XCW Factory Edition bike with WP Pro component technology on the front forks. Again, that is not the air fork technology, that is a spring fork technology. And I do think with other brands entering the market, a la Ducati and Triumph, entering with Showa and KYB twin chamber spring fork options, I do think this will force KTM's hand into putting spring forks back on their bike. Now again, I do want to reiterate that this KYB SSS Spring Fork Conversion Kit is the same technology seen in the Yamaha YZ and YZF lineup. It is also seen in the Triumph TF250X and the soon-to-be released Triumph TF450RC. So for you guys out there that own a KTM Husky or Gas, again, I do think it is a noteworthy upgrade for you to go out and buy a spring conversion kit, whether it be this KYB SSS Spring Conversion Kit or the WP 6500 cartridge kit, which is very similar to the WP Pro components offering Exact Pro 7548 board, minus the cone valve technology. Once again, I just want to thank you guys for tuning in and stick around to the end of the video. I hope this video helps you choose to whether or not to buy a spring fork for your KTM Husky or Gas, or stick with your air fork technology. Thank you guys again for watching. My name is Anthony, and I will see you guys in the next video.